that a particular hi-hat, open hat sound is absolutely something that will get me going when I hear it on a nice big fat club sound. Welcome back everybody to Learningtodj.com, teaching you the art and skill of musical influence. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about the basics of drum programming and dance music composition. Now, as a channel devoted to DJing and not music production, you might be asking yourself, Robert, why are we learning about this? And part of the reason is that as a DJ, understanding the actual elements that go into the composition can help you to better understand why in specific a track might be more groovy than another, as well as when you're working through transitions, what are the elements and instruments and samples that are actually clashing between two different tracks. So without further ado, let's jump into some of the basics. Dance music is composed of a variety of different sounds. Those sounds are what we call samples. And so a sample is basically a recording that somebody has taken somewhere along the lines, maybe in some recording studio, of a real instrument. And so as we know, in dance music, we have this 4 on the floor type of structure, which follows this big fat kick drum. Now, kicks are taken originally from the era of disco as it was brought then into house music. And so most dance and electronic music structured tracks tend to inherit this 4x4 pattern. However, within dance music, we can also add in kind of alternative programming. So for example, having a random kick somewhere in the groove can add kind of a little bit more of a shuffle and a little bit more of a rhythm to a particular track. Now, thankfully, house and electronic music is not just kicks. Maybe the Gabber folks will tell you otherwise. But in focusing on house music specifically, we have other types of samples and instruments as well. Inclusive of that is probably my favorite sample or drum programming, which is the open hi-hat. And that sounds something a little bit like this. All right, that was a ride, but not an open hi-hat. Let's try again. And now hearing basically that being played back, you can already get a feel for the sort of rhythm and the pulsation contained within house music. And that open hi-hat is an extremely important aspect of the rhythm. But house music would be super, super boring if we just had basically a kick and an open hi-hat. And so we have other elements of the drums and drum programming like the closed hi-hat, which sound a little something like this. And if we add it into our existing rhythm here, closed hats can add a little bit more kind of groove and funkiness and accentuate the existing rhythm without being sort of a main player. And so there's various different types of drum programming you can do for closed hi-hats. I've just added a basic random set of programming here, but we also have the 16th hi-hats, which is quite common, I think, in tech house. And I've added a little bit of groove and swing to kind of make it sound a little off. But it wouldn't be house music unless we had that big fat clap. Now, the clap usually happens on the second kick drum, usually sounding something a little bit like this. Similar to what we did with our closed hi-hats, we can also get a little bit groovy with our claps. And in this case, I've gone ahead and I guess I've added in some random claps here. And so adding all these different layers in together, you can kind of get a sense of the kind of groove that we're creating. Additionally, with both our open hi-hats, closed hats, kicks, and claps, we have the snare. And the snare drum is sort of a kind of like an uncle or aunt that comes to visit you every now and then in Christmas time and holidays and what have you. And it sort of fits into the picture, but it's enough of an outsider that you can notice it. And it usually is added in kind of these more groovy spots. So for example, playing it back with our existing rhythm, and in specific, the particular drum programming I've added here is super common in a lot of classic house tracks. So we've covered several different instruments, but now we're going to talk a little bit about rides. And so rides are kind of an accentuating feature that you can add a little bit more high and drive to the sound of your track. And they sound a little something like this. So adding it back into our existing groove here. Just going to increase the volume of the ride there. Without the ride, with the ride. Now we'll move a little bit more over into some of the other drums that we can add in. And so these are called toms. Now toms are kind of an element that you can add in a little bit more rolling and moving. We have three different types of toms. We have the low, the mid, and the high, and they sound a little something like this. So for the low tom, and now let's do the mid tom, and finally we'll do the high tom. And so adding these into our existing loop, we can hear a little bit of how the profile or the characteristics of the track change. So I'll do first without the toms, and now I'll add in the toms. All right. And finally, it would not be a completed track if we did not have a few other elements outside of drum programming, which is where the other sides of house music come from. So in specific, I've pulled a couple of little short samples here. I think this is a bass line. And we've got, I think this is a sort of key or pad of sorts. And finally, we've got just a little bit of texture or pads or chord or something weird here. So throwing it all together, it sounds a little something like this. And we can now go ahead and we can strip different layers of the track back to see what things sound like. So let's remove the snare and the toms. Now I'm going to remove the ride and the closed hat. And now the open hat. And let's remove everything but the bass line, the clap, and the kick. So you can see a lot of house music and electronic music is built in layers using these samples. So let's go ahead, we'll add back the closed hats and hear what that sounds like. And now we'll add in the open hat. We're starting to get more of that pulsing going on with the rhythm. I'm going to add back some of our little vocal melodic elements. And now I'm going to add the snare and the toms. Alrighty, so understanding how, where, and the different sounds and samples that go into making a track can really help you to develop your intuition and understanding of a given track and how and why it might not work when transitioning between. Hopefully this has been helpful. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel and check out all of the different articles available on the blog learningtodj.com. For now, this has been Robert, and I will catch you next time.